Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and this is Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends this week. Hey, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Please visit our website at www.legendssuperstitionmountains.com. Leave a comment. We answer comments, like comments. We like to read your feedback. We're going to get right into it. This story is called The Sunlit Cave. It goes back to 1779, and this is when the Spanish first are moving into California. They're starting to set up a number of missions and things out there. And they set up the Pueblo La Purísima Concepcion. I had to look at that one. A lot of words there. But they set that up. It's was located on Yuma Hill in Yuma, that area. And the priests, there's a mission in a village. But the following year, they set up another mission, the San Pedro de Bescanar, about 8 miles south. And they have these two missions set up along the Colorado River on the California side. And the Yuma Indians are there, and they were treated basically very poorly by the priests and everyone in the towns. And the Yumas were trying to find a way to placate this. Of course, the priests at the time want to convert them. They're doing conversions and all, but they're still not being very nice about the whole thing. But the Yumas found out these gold rocks they'd find in and around the Colorado in different areas. The priests would get very excited and sometimes would reward them for them. So they started bringing in more and more. Well, that wasn't enough because greed. We got to remember greed has no bounds by politics, religion, or anything else. So they started to kind of pressure and pressure more. And the Yuma Indians were kind of like, come on, man, you were happy at first, but now you're like, well, eventually they start torturing people trying to find out where they're finding this gold. They're making it into chalices, crosses, making gold bars. They're accumulating quite a lot. Yuma Indians have had enough. One of the converts had been given a Spanish name, Salvador Palma. And him and his son and a couple other guys decide, well, we've about had enough of this. And they go to the Mojaves and try to gather more people to help them. And they decide they're going to just eliminate this, get the Spanish out of there. So on July 17, 1781, just 2 years after they founded these missions, they swarm in. They kill about 135 people, capture about 125 prisoners. And they just literally whatever they can burn, they burn to the ground. Anything else, they just throw it over and just wipe the whole, both villages out. And they take off and disperse. The Spanish soldiers come up in once they've gotten word what happened up there. And there's just nothing but devastation. There's a few people that had gotten out of there. They go out. They start questioning the neighboring tribes and a number of people. They're able to get about 70 of the captured prisoners back. The only details they really get was that the Yuma Indians had traveled north. They put all the spoils that they had onto rafts, took them upstream on the Colorado. And on the Arizona side, on the eastern side, they'd gotten to a cave, and they had put all this stuff in a cave somewhere along there. So the Spanish soldiers go up and down, and they're looking for this cave, any cave, and they can't find anything. So after a period of time of searching, they get some information. One of the captured people that's freed is a soldier who survived. And he says, yeah, there was a cave up in there, but they got it all up in there. But he can't, none of them, because of everything that happened, could pinpoint. So the Spanish soldiers go for some time, and that seems to be the end of it. Many, many years later, a gentleman by the name of Homer Alexander had befriended, I believe it was a Havasupai Indian, and he knew something of the story. And he told him, okay, it's north of Yuma, but the cave, what he understood is the cave, the only way you could find it is the sunlight at a certain point of day, you'll see the cave. Most of the time you can't really see it. So he said it's really, really difficult. He didn't have much other information on that. Then when they buried everything in there, it's in the back of the cave, and they made a fake wall, which is smoother but looks very close to the wall that are inside the cave. So you're not going to be able to find all this stuff. So it's going to be very difficult, but at least that's the clues he had. So Homer Alexander goes out. He searches. He spends weeks and nothing. He's got nothing, just like anyone else that searched. And it's just about the last days when he's like, you know what, I'm not going to spend more than another day. I'm going to have to head back. I'm almost out of supplies. It's not worth it. To be in the exact right spot at the exact right time, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. He's just ready to kind of fold it up, give it up, and he sees a cave. And he goes, am I in the right spot? Well, now he has to travel from the California side to the Arizona side and then relocate this particular spot while being on the other shoreline. That takes him a few days, but he finds it, and there's a cave. It's 6 feet high by about 8 feet wide, the opening. And he goes inside, and there's a kind of a big open space. You can tell the ceiling's darkened, that there have been some fires in there. But he's not sure if it's just something indigenous or what, you know. So he starts going around. He gets to the back, and he has to crawl at the back. There's a very low ceiling. When he gets to the very back wall, it's much smoother. And he's like, it's been worked or something. So he gets his pickaxe and starts digging into it. And he starts to get a little excited because as he's digging, it's like breaking off. And in it, he's finding there's a lot of sand and some old plants, like wood and stuff. So he thinks, well, this must have been, somebody sealed this regardless. So he works at it all day, finishes up, goes back down to his camp that night. Then he's worried because he says, maybe I did find it, but maybe I found a burial area. So now he's starting to think, what happens if I'm disturbing a burial area or something and some of the Yumas or Mojaves come through here? This isn't good for me. So he kind of is twisting on it. He says, well, I want to at least poke a hole, see what it is, and whether or not they need to seal it up and get out. So Homer goes back the next day, pops. He finally gets a hole big enough that he can kind of peer in, but it's musty. He's not sure. He can't make any indication. He can't really see, and he reaches in, and he reaches around and can feel some cloth or something and feels something and some rocks, and he's just not sure, you know, what he's dealing with. So he opens it bigger, and finally he opens it big enough where he can kind of get a candle in and get most his head and part of his body in. And he sees what the cloth was sacks that were breaking open, and there was gold nuggets all through it. And there's a whole large area of just stuff, and they'd put claws and hides and stuff over everything. So he figures, well, this must be it. And there's a lot of stuff in there. So he takes everything he can, goes down to his camp, comes back up, grabs a bunch more, takes his camp, and then he realizes, oh, I have one burro and one horse. I can't take it all. There's no way I can take all this. So he comes up with a plan, figures, okay, I'm going to have to go up and seal it up, and then come back and bring more burros or mules and carry it out. So Alexander spends that night in camp, goes up the next day, seals it up, almost finished. He's got a little bit more to do to kind of make it look pretty much like it was, because remember, he only put a certain hole in it. He didn't take out the whole wall. And he's eating dinner, and 2 Mojave Indians show up. And they just kind of come into his camp. He doesn't have his rifle nearby, but then they're not armed, so they just kind of looking like, we want something to eat. He's able to communicate with them. They are wanting to know what he's doing. He basically lets them know he's looking for some gold in the area. They basically are able to let him know he's in the wrong area. He needs to go upstream. There's some better spots upstream. This area had been really good. Ehrenberg, La Paz, down through Yuma. There had been a lot of gold panning through there in the mid-1860s. It was a pretty wealthy area. They have a steamboat and everything going through there. So he's listening to them. They eat food. He keeps waiting. He says he's not sure. Feels a little relieved because they just seem to be friendly and just wanting something to eat and all. They finish, tell him goodbye, thank you. They go on their way. He waits for a while, and then he starts backtracking them a bit, realizes they came back the way they came in. Bothers him a little, like they were checking on him. So he starts feeling a little more paranoid that maybe they believe his story, but they're maybe going to be back or in the area. So the next morning he gets up, he hurries up, goes up, finishes off that wall, cleans everything up, makes it look like he really hadn't been there, got down, whole time looking over his shoulder, worrying. He starts gathering everything up, puts everything on his mule, his burro, gets his horse, and he starts heading out. He figures he'll head to Ehrenberg. This is one of our clues, is that it's closer to Ehrenberg than Yuma, because that's where he's figured to go to Ehrenberg, catch the steamboat down to Yuma, take the railroad into the Pacific coast. So he's on his way to Ehrenberg, and before he gets to Ehrenberg, he realizes there's no way me as one person is going to be able to do this, and I can't watch my own back. I need someone to help out. So before he gets to Ehrenberg, he makes a decision. He knows a rancher named Dan Devine up in Kingman. So when he gets to Ehrenberg, he just gets another burro, and he disperses his weight, because that was one of his problems. He was just way overloaded, and he had to get rid of some supplies on the way to Ehrenberg, and then heads for Kingman. He gets to Kingman, meets Dan Devine, who's there with his wife and his children, and shows Dan and his wife what he found, and told them there's a lot more of this, and I want to get rid of this, and then we're going to buy at least 12 burros, mules, and we'll head back, and then the two of us should be able to, one can keep watch, and we'll do this, and so that's what we'll do. Dan's pretty excited about it, of course, and so they get everything set up, get Alexander set, and he heads back to Ehrenberg, where he catches the steamboat. He's going to go down, take the railroad, the Southern Pacific, into Riverside, California. And that's a good plan. So Dan waits and waits, and after about 6 months, Dan's like, hasn't heard any word of anything. So he's kind of getting a little worried, figured that Homer Alexander should have been back by then. So he decides to make some inquiries. He makes inquiries, finds out he did arrive. People saw him on the way. He did arrive in Riverside, and the place where he actually turned the gold in at had told Dan that, yeah, we gave him over $129,000 in gold certificates for what he brought in. Dan's like, well, he made it, but what happened to him? So then he contacts law enforcement in Riverside and in the area, saying, look, this is what happened. My friend was down there, had a substantial amount of gold, ended up with these gold certificates, and he's missing. They dismiss it more like just Homer Alexander just decided to bug off possibly or whatnot. They got no leads. No one's ever heard from him again. So Dan decides, well, I'm going to go up and I'm going to kind of keep an eye out. And he kind of drew a rough map. He told me about it. I'm going to go down and look for this thing myself. Dan makes about 4 trips, and none of them are successful. He never even feels like he's sniffing anything. Over the years since that time, there's been a number of people have searched for this treasure. Now think about this. Homer Alexander got $129,000 in gold certificates for what he hauled into town, okay? What he took in the train and got into town. Gold was $20 an ounce at that time. They said it was 60% silver, or 60% gold. A lot of it was silver. So the gold he did take, which was probably more the concentrate and the nuggets and stuff, none of the artifacts, because that would have been easier to turn in and stuff. That's a pretty good chunk of change, not only then, but that's a good chunk of change today now with the price of gold. So Dan figured, he can't, but after 4 tries, he just can't leave the wife and kids, and he's spending money to go look. Several other people have looked and always thought they had to be in the area, but no one's been able to find this place, this 6 by 8 foot cave that you see. So if you're ever on the California side of the Colorado River, somewhere between Yuma and Ehrenberg, and you look over and you see this dark hole, looks like a cave, maybe about 6 feet high, maybe it's 8 feet wide. Kind of make a note of it. Get a GPS on that sucker. Go over there, and if you get to the back and you crawl down on your hands and knees in the back, and the wall looks a little smooth, maybe you'll find that spot, and you get in there, and there's still, think about it, he took out 1 load, and he said there was at least 12 more loads in there. So there's 12 more loads worth whatever that valuation would be. Just add the zeros, right? Just add a couple more zeros. $20. I add 2 more zeros to what he had. That comes out, what, around $12 million? Or it's just a substantial amount. So let's just say there's a lot of stuff, and the artifacts themselves will go through the roof. So there's it out there, the Sunlit Cave. Maurice Kildare wrote that story up. So there's plenty of information, names and stuff you can look up. Pretty cool story. I kind of liked it. When I pulled it out, it was one of those ones I had to reread 2 or 3 times to look for that fault in it, where it didn't make sense. And the only thing that didn't make sense is Homer Alexander's disappearance, but that could make sense of that. He just got there and said, Dan's got enough information. You know what? I'm moving on. I am wealthy. I'm just going to move somewhere else, or he could and just change my identity, and I'm just going to live a long, happy life. And that could have been one of the possibilities, even though foul play could be part of that as well. So there you go, the story of Homer Alexander and the Sunlit Cave. Hope you enjoyed it this week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, or hope you had a wonderful weekend for Easter and all that. And we get into the last week, last days now, and we'll be moving into April 1st in the April time. Snakes coming out, weather will be kind of clearing up. We got a rainy weekend this weekend, but it'll be clearing out, and sure enough, soon the wildflowers will be going, the snakes will be out, and the heat will be coming in. So thanks for joining us this week. Have a wonderful week yourself, and always remember, most important thing to remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle, you're not, and this was Chasing Legends.